Good evening. Welcome to LCTD and our webinar on Inspiring Teaching, Supporting Learning. My name's Gillian Courtney and I'm the Director of Studies at LCTD and the Head of Centre for Education and Training Professionals. We're an independent training provider offering a range of high quality training and development opportunities for individuals and businesses, both throughout the UK and internationally. And tonight, this is the first of a series of free webinars that we'll be presenting as part of our commitment to continuing professional development. So make sure you keep following LCTD on LinkedIn, social media and our website for further details of events. And these will be run by our Centre for Accounting and Business Professionals, our Centre for Healthcare Professionals, as well as our Centre for Education and Training Professionals. So if you want to find out more, I'll drop our contact details into the chat box and you can contact us directly. I'll also be monitoring the chat messages throughout our session this evening. So if you have any questions for Joey or myself, please put them in the chat box and we'll try to answer them tonight. Otherwise, we'll post a response alongside the recording from this evening's session through our website and on LinkedIn. Now I'd like to hand you over to our guest speaker today, so Joey Greenwood from Smart Training Solutions, to introduce himself and to take you through our webinar this evening.
Thanks, Gillian, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you all tonight. We've been working with the London Centre for Training and Development for a little while now. We've got very similar approaches and feelings and views on the professionalism of teaching and training and education generally. So I'm here tonight to share some of those thoughts with you. I'm going to give you some insights into what great training can consist of and how to look after your people and make them the best they can be. Because at the end of the day, you know, people performance is one of our specialities and it's a passion. So I'm going to share some slides with you. So I'm just going to bring that up on screen. I'll take you through the presentation, but I'd encourage you just to put any questions you have in the chat box. Gillian will be monitoring those as we go through. And I'll take some pauses during the presentation to answer and address any questions that you might have. So feel free, please, to be as interactive as you like, and I really do hope you get something from the webinar. So without further ado, I'll get some slides up on screen and we'll have a look together. Okay, so I'm Joey Greenwood. I'm the owner of Smart Training Solutions, an educational consultancy based in the United Kingdom. We've been actively providing support to training providers and individuals who want to have a career in education and teaching and training in particular for around about 12 years now. So I had a 24-year military career. I spent a lot of time training soldiers for operations around the world. And then when I retired from the military, we set up Smart Training Solutions to help civilian organizations to maximize the performance of their people through effective training and education. Okay, so this webinar is about the right courses for the right delivery in the first instance. So the education sector has lots of different teaching qualifications available that you can either undertake as an individual or you can put the people in your organization into these programs to make them effective as teachers and trainers. So I'm going to start with a question. What do you want your teachers to do? Do you want them to deliver learning? Do you want them to assess learning for accredited qualifications? Or do you want to do both? And that's a key question for anybody who's stepping into the educational arena. You've got to understand what your people need to be able to do to engage your learners and to provide the learning or the assessment required for them to achieve their program of choice. So I'll ask those questions again. Have a think about it. Do you want them to deliver learning? Do you want them to assess learning against accredited qualification requirements? Or do you actually want them to do both? And the answer to those questions will determine the direction of travel that you need to take with regards to qualification. So if you want to put anything in the chat box, you could put in there deliver, you could put in there assess, or you could put in there both. And Gillian will monitor that chat box and maybe give me an idea of what our audience are looking for with regards to qualification. So what do we do to deliver learning? Well, the further education sector, and this webinar is going to specifically focus on the further education sector in the first instance, is to look at the different qualifications that exist out there for you to undertake. So if you want to start a career as a teacher or a trainer, or you're actually a teacher and trainer and you want to formalize your existing qualifications or existing experience, then these are the qualifications that you might be of interest to you. So there's 3 stages when we talk about teaching and training in further education. And as you can see on the slide there, that stage 1 is the entry to the sector. And to get entry to the sector as a teacher or trainer, you're looking to undertake the level 3 award in education or the level 4 certificate in education. And they're both very good start points. And I'll give you a little bit more detail about what they consist of in just a moment. Stage 2 is if you want to become a qualified teacher in the sector, you need to be looking at a qualification of level 5 or above. And you're looking for a qualification called the level 5 diploma in education. And that would recognize you as having qualified as a teacher. Stage 3, if you want a career in teaching or you want to progress that career further, then you could look at advanced practitioner status. And there's 2 elements to advanced practitioner status currently in the further education sector. And that is qualified teacher of learning and skills, known as QTLS, and advanced teacher status, known as ATS. So they're your 3 sort of entry points and 3 stages of teacher progression and teacher development. You'll see on the slide there, we've got an award in education and training. So that's a level 3 award. Academically, that's equivalent to about an A level. So that's what the expectations are from an academic point of view. And it consists of 3 units. Now, if you're thinking about putting your staff into qualifications and they're very new to training, then this qualification is a great start point. So let's have a look at what the qualification consists of and how it might be delivered. So first of all, you've got 3 units that are in that award. So your staff or yourself, whoever's going into that program, first unit would be to understand what that role requires from you and what the responsibilities are of that role, and who else you would work with in supporting you as a teacher. So what relationships would you need to build to become effective as a teacher? Unit 2 is about using and understanding inclusive teaching and learning approaches. And in that unit, your staff or yourself would learn about creating schemes of work, so training programs. And those training programs might be over a period of days or weeks, months, or even years. So they'll have a look at how to create a scheme of work. And underneath that scheme of work, we have session plans. So teachers can go into a session with a structured plan, understand what they're going to deliver, but more importantly, understand what the learners need to achieve by the end of the session. So you get some guidance on building session plans. Unit 3 is understanding assessment in education and training. So we look at how to assess a learner's knowledge and understanding, both formatively, so as they're progressing through their learning, and secondly, as summatively as well, to confirm that that learning's taken place and they've achieved their programme. That qualification is available across the UK. It can be delivered online. It can be delivered in a blended approach, similar to this. And the London Centre for Training and Development would be able to point you in the right direction for accessing that programme. It can be delivered in about 5 days. And during that programme, anybody attending it would need to create and submit 3 assignments based on the 3 units on screen, and would undertake a micro teach as part of the qualification. So at some point in the program, you or your staff would deliver a 15-minute presentation and be assessed on the delivery of that. So in summary, it's a great first step into the teaching and training world. It's achievable by most people, but it will give your people structure, some knowledge of what training should look like, and more importantly, give the learners who are being taught an effective and useful experience. So I would recommend it very highly as a start point. If you want your teachers or trainers to assess learners, then there's a number of different assessor qualifications on the market as well. And it's really important that you identify which area you want to be in. So you've got the award in education, which is delivery of training, and a little bit of assessment to confirm learning's taken place. If you want to do an accredited qualification, and particularly if it's based in a workplace, then you would need an assessor qualification. So if you've got a training centre of your own and you want to deliver accredited qualifications, then you may need your team to have an assessor qualification. The assessor qualification comes in a number of different formats. So you'll see on screen there, you can undertake the understanding the principles and practices of assessment, which is 1 unit. And that might be because you don't want to practice as an assessor, but you might be a manager who wants to have a better understanding of that process. So you can undertake the theory unit only. If you've got teams that deliver and assess in a workplace and want to deem somebody competent in a workplace environment, then the assessing competence in the work environment qualification would be the right qualification to choose. That consists of the theory unit, but also a second unit that would qualify somebody to go into a workplace, assess somebody else's abilities, and deem them competent. You would use assessment methods like observation, verbal questioning, and looking at what they produce as a work product within a work environment. Again, very useful qualification. And if you deliver accredited qualifications, it's mandatory in quite a lot of them. So again, if you're going to deliver these types of qualifications, come to the London Centre for Training and Development, get some advice and get some guidance on what qualification status your staff need to have.
Can I quickly interject there, because we've actually got a question based on the teaching and the assessing, Jerry.
Yes.
So with relation to the assessing, I've had a question that says, do you need students to, in order to do the Unit 1 principles qualification, so you assess them?
No, if you only undertake the first unit, the theory unit, you can do that without access to any students at all. So it is about the principles and practices. It's about the theory of good practice within assessment. If you do want to do a practical unit like the one assessing competence in the work environment, you would need to have access to 2 learners on a minimum of 2 occasions. So you would have to do 4 assessments. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. And then I've had another one come in that was relating to the initial teaching qualifications. Do you need any prior qualifications in order to do the level 3 or level 4 qualifications, or can you jump straight in?
You can jump straight in on both accounts, actually. So you could go straight into the level 3. So my guidance on that would be, if you are very new to standing in front of people and speaking and training generally, the level 3 award is a really nice way to get entry to the sector, because you'll do a micro teach amongst your peers and people on the course with you. So it's quite a safe environment. It's a comfortable environment for a new teacher to start in. If you undertake the level 4 certificate, there's 6 units in there, but you've got to be observed over 3 hours with live learners in your own work area. And you've got to record 30 hours of teaching practice. So you can see the differences there. So if you're very new, go for the level 3. If you're actually practicing already as a teacher and you've got experience, you've got confidence and you feel capable, go straight into the level 4. But there's no entry requirements for either or. So, you can choose based on your own wishes, really.
That's great. I think that actually answered the other question that I'd had come in. So perfect. Thank you, Jerry. Carry on.
No, perfect. No, great. Okay. Well, the other assessor qualifications you can consider, if you don't assess in a workplace, but let's say you assess in a college environment or somewhere out of a workplace, you could undertake the level 3 award in assessing vocationally related achievement. And instead of doing a unit that's focused on the workplace, you do a unit called Assess Vocational Skills, Knowledge and Understanding. That gives you the skills to use assessment methods like simulation, assignments, setting projects, case studies, skills tests, a whole range of differing assessment methodology that sits outside of a workplace. So again, you don't have to be in a workplace to be an assessor. It's very much relevant to people that work in classroom environments or college environments and things like that. If you have an aspiration to assess both in work and out of work, and this is a very popular qualification with people in the UK who deliver apprenticeship programs, you can undertake the level 3 certificate in assessing vocational achievement. And that certificate gives you this full range of skills. So you can go into a workplace or you can go into a classroom environment and you can assess across both. And as I mentioned, very popular with apprenticeship programs that have an off-the-job training requirement and an in-work training environment as well. So very, very useful qualification. Okay, so if we move on from learning and assessment and we look at managerial expectation and managerial role, we fall into internal quality assurance. Now, I look at internal quality assurance as a bit like football management. You're only as good as the players on the pitch. So being a people performance driven organisation like we are and like the London Centre for Training and Development, we take internal quality assurance really, really seriously. We've got to provide the right levels of support, training, coaching, and development to our teams to make them as the best we can be. The internal quality assurance program gives you a training management overview perspective of how training is being conducted. So let me just unpick that a little bit for you. So if you did an accredited qualification and you've got qualified assessors going into workplaces or into classroom environments and formally assessing against an accredited qualification, there's a high likelihood that you will need an internal quality assurance qualification to meet the accredited qualification requirement. It's broken down into two parts again. And to just come back to your question earlier, Gillian, the first unit is theory-based. So a manager could undertake the principles and practices of quality assurance without having access to assessors. So you could do the theory unit. If you want to apply internal quality assurance practices and principles, then you'd need to do that second unit, which you can see on the bottom of the screen, which is internally assure the quality of assessment. The idea behind that is you have access to two assessors on 2 occasions who have got learners of their own. And what you're trying to do there is monitor the performance of the assessor, give them the right levels of support, give them feedback and guidance, and coach them in the best practices of assessment so that the teams that you're responsible for as the IQA become very proficient and very effective at what they do very quickly. And the internal quality assurance program provides you the skills and the tools to be able to do that. Again, the London Centre for Training and Development can provide guidance on the right qualification based on your training program requirements and based on the accredited program that you're looking to deliver. Excellent qualification, one of the biggest qualifications that we deliver with regards to volume, because there's so many companies and organisations out there that value what quality assurance brings to that program delivery. The next one in the suite of qualifications I just wanted to give you an overview on this evening was the external quality assurance of qualifications as well. Now, in England, an organisation known as Ofqual, the Office of Qualification and Exam Regulation, are responsible for making sure that awarding organisations who provide certificates to learners are operated in an effective way. So awarding organisations employ external quality assurance teams to visit training centres, to conduct audits, and to check on the work that the internal quality assurer and the assessment teams do. You can do this role as a freelance, self-employed associate of an awarding organisation, and there's lots of opportunities out there on the market to be able to do that. It works in a very similar way to the internal quality assurance programme, but it looks at it from an external perspective. So if you want to work for an awarding organisation and go and look at how different training sectors operate and do audits and evaluate their provision, then you need to have an external quality assurer qualification. Again, you can do a theory unit on external quality assurance to give you an insight as to how awarding organisations operate and the expectations of that role. Or if you've already secured a role with an awarding organisation, you could undertake the practical unit as well. And that would give you a qualification in external quality assurance within an educational setting. Excellent programs, both internal and external.
Excellent. I've got a couple of questions coming in on that as well. So for the IQA, I've had a question from Solken that says, how long does it take to do the IQA qualification?
Yeah, great question. If you're dedicated and you've got the time available, the internal quality assurance qualification can be achieved relatively quickly. I'm going to talk you through the different models that we've used in the past to deliver the qualification, and hopefully that will help answer the question. So if we take the full IQA qualification, so theory unit and practical unit, you can undertake 4 2.5-hour training sessions via Zoom to get the knowledge inputs for the theory element of the internal quality assurer program. And then you can choose to do the assessment through assignment or through professional discussion. And if you choose to do it through professional discussion, the assessment would require you to undertake 2 60-minute professional discussions. So that's 2 hours in total for that part. A further professional discussion of around 30 minutes and 2 small pieces of written work. And that would achieve the theory unit. Alternatively, you can do it by assignment and submit 3 assignments based on exactly the same requirement, but just through the written word instead. Theoretically, that could be done within 6 to 8 weeks if somebody's able to attend the training sessions relatively quickly, do the research needed to prepare for the assessment and engage with the assessment. So 6 to 8 weeks, you could do unit 1, quite achievable, I think. The practical unit would only be restricted really by the access that you have to assessment teams. So in outline, what you'd need to do to demonstrate competency in the practical unit is to be able to access 2 assessors on 2 occasions, so 4 in total. You would generate an IQA plan, so a quality assurance plan for your area of work. You would sample some portfolio work of each assessor. You would go out and observe each assessor conducting their assessment duties. You would conduct and chair a standardization meeting, which allows you to get your training teams together and talk about the standards and what you're trying to achieve as a training team, and produce a professional development record. And I'm going to touch a little bit on professional development records as we go through tonight's webinar. So hopefully that gives an indication. The practical unit, again, if you've got access to those people, 6 to 8 weeks, I would think probably realistic. So 3 to 4 months, maybe, I think in total to do the whole qualification, if you've got the right access to the right areas that you need.
Perfect, thank you. And then I've had one other question come in from Mandy, who says, do you have to hold the assessor qualification in order to do the IQA qualification?
Great question. The simple answer to that is no, you don't. You can go straight to internal quality assurance if you so wish. Some people would argue that you're better equipped if you've been out and done some assessment yourself. There is merit in that argument, but actually it isn't a requirement. And I've met some really effective internal quality assurance people that have gone from teaching or even from management straight into internal quality assurance and have been great in their roles. So the answer to that is no, you don't.
Excellent, thank you. And then one's just come in as we've been talking about the EQA qualification. So somebody's asking, I think it's Isaac's asking, do you have to hold an EQA theory qualification in order to get a job working at an awarding organisation?
Another good question. No, you don't. Some awarding organisations will recruit you and then train you themselves. Other organisations would like you to have undertaken the first unit yourself, I think for 2 reasons. It shows commitment. And secondly, when you go to that awarding organisation, you already carry an understanding of what the EQA role is. Therefore, you are aware of the expectations of the role. And what they'll do is give you the second unit as part of your role as an associate supporting them. So it will really depend on the awarding organisation that you choose to work with. There's over 160 awarding organisations in the country. So there's lots of opportunity out there, and they cover a variety of different sectors. So keep an eye out on the awarding organisation websites. Again, the London Centre for Training and Development might be able to assist you based on your competencies and your expertise and what sector you want to work in. But it's very much a mixed bag. What would my recommendation be? I think if I was on the market looking for an EQA role, I would undertake Unit 1 as a start point, get that development, get a feel for what it consists of. And then when you apply to an awarding organisation for a permanent role or even a freelance role, I think you're in a better place. And if they're looking at CVs of associates to come on board and one person's got that Unit 1 and another person hasn't, I think that would tip the scales in your favour if you're carrying it.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that covers all the questions for the moment.
Great, super. Okay, so let's move away from looking at the right qualification for the right requirement. Let's move into developing teams. So how do we develop teams? Well, if you're a centre manager or a manager looking after a training organisation, then again, getting the right qualification for your people in the first instance is only the first step. The second step is providing the right levels of development for your teams to be able to flourish and be effective in the workplace. So where do we get some of our development from? Some of the things I'm going to share with you tonight are free of charge, so you can access them. You don't need to be members of these organisations, and they are full of great information and great resource. So let's start with the first one, standardisation within your own organisation. What does standardisation mean? Well, first of all, if you've got trainers and teachers out there delivering information, and you've got assessors out there assessing evidence of learners against programme outcomes and requirements, the question you've got to ask yourself is, how effective are they? And secondly, are they all assessing and delivering in a similar way? And if you can't reassure yourself that they're doing that, then you need to complete what's known as standardisation meetings and activities. In summary, what that means is you bring your training team in for the day. They bring evidence that they've gathered against learners on programme. They sit around a table together. They share best practice. They talk about why they've made assessment decisions in the way that they have. And you can have a look at each other's work, compare notes, find good practice within your own training teams, and then go out and use that best practice to the benefit of your learners. So that's number one for me for developing teams. Bring your teams in, develop them, standardise them, send them back out, let them be effective. A lot of training organisations see standardisation as an unnecessary overhead because you've got to bring your teams in, and theoretically they're not generating money or revenue for your organisation. So arguably it's an overhead and it's a cost. But the first 5 years of our career in Smart Training Solutions, we specialised in recovering poorly delivered programmes. And in those 5 years, the one thing that stood out to me all of the time was that people weren't prepared well enough to deliver, and their people weren't developed as they delivered. So if you think that one day is an overhead, I promise you, if you invest the time up front, develop your teams early, and then send them out to deliver, they'll deliver well, and you will save money and be more effective and provide better quality in the long run. And that is proven, absolutely proven. The other areas I think you could use to go and develop teams is an organisation known as the Education and Training Foundation. It's a government subsidised body. I'm going to touch on it a little bit later in the webinar as well, and I'm going to take you to the website and just show you some of the information that it has. But it is a membership body. I think it's about £60 a year to be a member. But actually, under COVID and outside of the pandemic as well, they do offer some free training resources and free webinars and CPD events. So it's worth a look. The website underneath that, the Excellence Gateway. The Excellence Gateway used to be the go-to website for resource, and it closed for a little while. But the Education and Training Foundation have reopened that website, and they now manage it. Anybody can go onto that website anytime. It's full of best practice examples, lots of resources, lots of advice and guidance across a whole range of different educational sectors. So actually, for free and as a website that's easy to access, it's an absolute gift for training providers and for individual practitioners as well. If you're just going into teaching and training, it's got some really good lesson plans and resources that you can use with these students and use it in your own training to make it as good as it can be. So I definitely recommend having a look there. The third one, which is probably very close to the audience because I know this was advertised through LinkedIn, and we use LinkedIn as part of our development program for our teams, is to get yourself involved in the number of different groups that are available in the LinkedIn world. So I've just listed 5 there on screen that we're members of, and we use those to stay up to date with education sort of issues and topics on a day-to-day basis. So my routine on a morning is I get up, have a coffee, And before I go into work and start thinking about what the work day brings, I'm on LinkedIn while I'm reading my coffee for 10 minutes. I go across these groups and have a look at my news feed. And within 10 minutes, I'm up to date with everything that's going on in the sector. It's a great way of keeping up to speed with what's going on and also engaging with like-minded professionals. So have a look at those groups. There's groups dedicated to assessors, IQAs and EQAs. There's groups dedicated to assessing and verifying. There's groups dedicated to apprenticeship programs and much more than that as well. There are only 5 key ones that I'm a member of. There's a lot more than that as well. Just as an aside as well, actually, it isn't on the slide, but there is also a new app that's just been launched in the last couple of months or so called the Clubhouse. And the Clubhouse is a social platform where you can go and listen to live speakers, very much like this. But there's lots of different topics that are discussed in there by lots of different professionals from lots of different backgrounds. So again, if you're looking to develop teams, go into the Clubhouse, have a look at what's been scheduled for up and coming webinars, get your teams in there, get them listening, get them to sit and listen to a 45-minute webinar, bring that information back into the workplace, use it in your standardization meetings and talk about what they've learned from that webinar, how they can apply it in their practice. Loads of great ways to develop your teams, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Okay, one of the things that we do here at SMART to develop our teams is we ask all of our trainers, coaches, and teachers to self-assess against the Education and Training Foundation's Professional Standards Framework. This again is free. There is an electronic self-assessment tool on the website that you can go to, either as an individual or you can get your trainers to go if you're an organisation and do a self-assessment against 20 key standards of what they believe are the attributes of a great teacher and trainer. And when you go through that self-assessment, it's going to identify gaps that you can have a look at then on how you're going to develop your teams to improve those gaps or to make those gaps stronger with regards to their teaching makeup. So I'm just going to take you in there now and we'll have a quick look at the kinds of things that those professional standards are looking for and what your trainers would be measured against. So just give me 2 seconds just to click this link and take us in there. Okay, so I'm now on the Education and Training Foundation website. If you want to find these professional standards, we'll make them available within the slides, but also you'll see from the web address, it's the Education and Training Foundation. And if you Google Education and Training Foundation Professional Standards, it'll take you straight to the page and you'll be able to access it yourself. So if we just have a quick look down here, there's 3 key themes that the Education and Training Foundation suggests that teachers and trainers should be measured against. The first one is their professional values and attributes. So what values do they hold? What attributes do they have as teachers and trainers? So let's just have a look at some of the headline news from that. If you think back to the first slide that I put up during this webinar, it talked about stages 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 was entry level, so you'll see I've taken that from. Stage 2 was a qualified teacher, and stage 3 was an advanced teacher. So it doesn't matter what stage you are in your teaching career, you can use these professional standards to develop that practice further. So some of the professional values and attributes. The first one, for example, here is reflect on what works best in your teaching and learning to meet the diverse needs of learners. And it gives your teachers and trainers an opportunity to reflect based on what stage in their career they're on. So I'm going to focus on stage 1. So let's say we've got teachers and trainers that have just come into the industry. So the first thing that they're going to do is ask themselves this self-analysis question. I reflect on my teaching, evaluate its impact on my different learners, and identify aspects of my teaching that work well, and those that need developing to meet the diverse needs of learners. So they're going to ask themselves that question, and then they're going to give themselves a score. And they're going to go through those questions in turn, measuring themselves against all of these 20 key areas. So let's have a look at what other themes are involved in these professional standards. So we've got professional values and attributes. And then we come to the next theme, which is professional knowledge and understanding. What kind of things are going to appear in here? Let's look at number 7. So this is the seventh of 20 key areas. So the first one is maintain and update knowledge of your subject or vocational area. Now, we talked about professional development as being a theme of this webinar. So this is one of the key questions, I suppose, we're going to ask ourselves. So stage 1 is, I demonstrate secure and current subject or vocational knowledge that is relevant to developing my learners' understanding and skills. So do I do that? Do I demonstrate current subject or vocational knowledge, or do I need to update? This is a really valid question for some tutors who have been out of industry for a long time. So let's say, for example, you work in a college or in a training provider and you haven't been in industry for 4 or 5 years. Well, the answer to that question might be, no, maybe I'm not as current as I should be. So the next question after that is, how do I update my currency? How do I make myself effective in my vocational area? And that might be by getting a work placement, by going back into an industry for a period of days or weeks to update. It might be by joining a membership body that would keep me updated on where my professional practice is and what's new to the sector that I'm working in. There's lots of different ways to achieve that, I think. The third theme is professional skills. So let's have a look at one of the areas against professional skills. So one of the questions I'm going to ask is against motivate and inspire learners to promote achievement and develop their skills to enable progression. So as a stage 1 tutor, what am I looking at? The question I'm going to ask myself is, do I use motivational strategies to enable learners to meet intended learning outcomes? I inspire learners in my teaching and understand ways to support their progression. Do I do that? Do I motivate my learners? Do I inspire my learners? You know, when we talk about motivational dialogue, for example, are you stimulating interest in learners? Are you motivating learners? Are you helping them develop? Are you giving them the skills so that they become self-learning, self-centered learning? So how are you doing that? How is your teams doing that? And if you don't know, then score yourself quite lowly, and then let's work out how we develop those skills. And it might be by attending coaching skills courses, might be by just getting some internal training and having a look at how we do inspire people, or how we motivate, or how we engage with our learners. So I think that whole professional standards framework, the 20 areas that you can self-assess against, will give you a really good indication as to where you are as a teacher against those 20 expectations. And I'm going to show you a little bit later in the webinar how I've used those internally here at Smart Training Solutions to develop our teams and make them the best they can be. Okay, just going to return to the presentation slide. Okay, so that's the Education and Training Foundation, and that was the professional standards. So staying on the theme of developing teams, digitization of learning, absolutely topical at the moment during the pandemic and during lockdown. How do we get people, how do we get our people, our teachers, our trainers, our skills coaches to be effective with digital technology and to engage learners through the use of digital platforms? It's a really big ask for a lot of teachers and trainers out there at the moment. They've all been forced to come onto platforms like this and deliver training in ways that they've never had to deliver before. So how do you upskill them? How do you give them the training and skills that they need to be effective? Well, I'm going to go back here to the Education and Training Foundation. So a little while ago, the Education and Training Foundation created the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform. It's free. You don't need to be a member to be able to use it. And I would absolutely recommend you get your training teams on there. Or if you have a general interest in wanting to develop digital skills, go there as well. So I'm going to take you there now, out of the presentation and into their website. So let's have a quick look. So you'll see there the website I'm on is Enhance, and it's part of the Education and Training Foundation website. As I mentioned, you don't need to be a member to engage with this. All you need to do is log on to the website and go and have a look at what it offers. So you'll see here there's educational technology modules that anybody can undertake. Some of the subject areas really, really useful for skills coaches and teachers and trainers who want to be online with their learners. There's a course on digital wellbeing, for example, how you can use technology to personalize and make learning effective. There's one here about using the flipped classroom. Now, if you're unaware of what a flipped classroom is, you can give learning topics to learners prior to them coming into a learning environment such as this, a virtual learning environment. And by giving a flipped classroom activity, by getting them to research something or do some activities before they come to your session online, means that when you get them into the session online, you can maximize use of time. So you can look at things in detail without having to worry about teaching the basics first. So if you go and do that module about using the flipped classroom, then it's going to give you some skills and some ideas on how best to engage your learners in that way. Really, really useful. These modules are all free. They're all short. They're all very interactive. They're all very engaging. So why wouldn't you want to use them? So get your training teams up there as part of their development plan. Go and tell them, I want you to know about using the flipped classroom. Do the digital module online. Bring back your thoughts and feelings about how we can use that in our own training. Fantastic opportunity. If you've got learners who don't have great digital skills, or maybe you don't have great digital skills, because let's face it, to come into the teaching profession, you didn't have to have great digital skills. I think now you probably do need to think about having great digital skills because of the pandemic and the way that education's now shifted to moving online. It's a different world, and we're never going to go back to where we were before. So digital skills are always going to be part of your makeup as a teacher and trainer. So why not enhance those skills? We've got a number of modules here, essential digital skills modules, teaching you how to use different devices, how to evaluate information, how to store information effectively, how to deal with technical problems, how to edit documents. The list goes on. So if it's for a learner, great, you're giving them digital literacy skills. If it's for you as a teacher and trainer, great as well. You're creating and developing your own skills. So it's an excellent website. And again, can't recommend it enough. Free, interactive, engaging. Please go there and use it. So, continuous professional development. How do we join it up? How do we make it work for us as organizations and for us as individuals? So we've talked a lot about how to develop knowledge and how to develop people. You can do that through reading, you can do that through peer discussion, you can do it through standardization, you can do it through websites like we've just looked at and do online learning modules. But what we need to do next is to record it. And we need to record it for a number of reasons. The first one is it shows competency in your sector. Secondly, it gives you a record of what you're undertaking with regards to your own development. That's really important if you're going out there to look for a job or an associate role. So let's say, for example, you go and apply for an EQA role, picking up on, I think it was Isaac's question earlier, he said about the EQA role. If we pick up on that and you go to a job interview or you apply for a role and you've got a comprehensive professional development record, that's going to stand you in really good stead because they're going to read that and see that you've done digital skills modules. You've been on LinkedIn and got information. You've been on webinars like this and attended. It all shows good commitment to your own professional development. So make sure you record it. The other reason we have it as well is if you are responsible for accredited programs, an awarding organisation will expect any assessor or any internal quality assurer to have a professional development record that demonstrates their competencies in that sector. So it's really important. The kinds of things you should have on a professional development record, don't just put a date and a course attended, but use it more as a reflection and more as an evaluative tool. So if you look at the one on screen at the moment, what training or learning activity have you completed? The date that you did this, how did you undertake the activity? So was it e-learning? Was it reading a magazine? Was it talking to a colleague? It doesn't have to be formal training to be professional development. It can be any activity that improves your knowledge from where it was to where it is now. What did you learn from it? So has it improved your practice, and how so? Why? And how has that learning made a difference to your work and improved the way that you work? And it might be something as simple as undertaking a digital module, and the impact it's had on your work is by you being able then to pass those digital skills on to your own learners. Or as an organisational level, it might be that all of your trainers have been through those digital modules, and you can put that on the professional development records of your organisation. So I would recommend wholeheartedly doing training, but I'd make sure that you record that training as well. It's a key part of developing your teams. And also when it comes to performance appraisals with your teams, maybe mid-year or yearly, you can bring professional development records in. You can have a look at what they've undertaken. You can link it to the professional standards that you've conducted, self-assessment, so you're developing gaps. There's a whole raft of things you can do with a professional development record, and it's great for your people and it's great for your organizations. Okay, so we've gone into looking at the right qualifications for the right trainers and the right requirements. We've looked at developing your teams and how you can find information to make that development happen. How do you then support your teams? So I'm just going to take you into my website, Smart Training Solutions, and I'm going to show you how we've used that to support our teams and how we constantly do that to support our teams. So on our website, we have a mission page, and I think it's important for any organisation to have a mission page, but I think it's important for an educational organisation to have a mission page, so learners and people that come to you can understand what your passion is. So if we just go into the mission page, you'll see here what we've adopted is the professional standards that we mentioned earlier and the ones that we've got our teams self-assessing against. Some of the key things of professional standards, some of the key information that underpins those is that our teachers and trainers are reflective. They're inquiring practitioners. They think about what they're delivering. They critically look at their own educational assumptions, and they look at their own values and their own practices. That's really important for us, and we make sure that our teams see that and we support them in doing that. They draw on relevant research as part of their evidence-based practice, so we encourage them to go away and research different models of theories, different ways of delivery, different ways of approaching things, and bring that back to the organisation. We ask them to act with honesty and integrity so that they hold the highest standards of ethics and they have professional behaviours, which we model as senior managers. We walk the walk and we model that behaviour so that our teams will follow that behaviour, and we feel that that's really important. Teachers and trainers are subject and vocational specialists and experts in what they do. We specialise in teacher training, accessory training, quality assurance training. We're very passionate about it. We make sure that we're the best in the business, or we believe we're the best in the business. Get your teams to believe that they're the best in the business. Support them in that belief. Make them good at what they do. Develop them into what they want to be. They're committed to maintaining and developing expertise. We've talked about professional development. We've given you some examples of where to find that professional development. So now support your teams in it, accessing it and using it and developing it. And the purpose of the standards is to support teachers and trainers to maintain and improve their standards of teaching and training and learning. So I think it's important that whatever your organisation stands for, have a look at these themed professional standards and make them core to what you do. You don't have to advertise them like we do, but bring them internal to your organisation. Make them the heartbeat of your organisation. Make them what you want to be and what you want your trainers and teachers to be. Because I guarantee you, your learners will feel that and see that and be able to touch that. And that will bring about a passion, hopefully, to your organisational delivery that you will benefit from both commercially, but secondly, by satisfaction across your learner cohorts and the programs that you deliver. If you want to use the professional standards, go to the Education and Training Foundation. What we've done with ours, just so our learners can see them, is we get them to click on the different themes on our website, and it brings up what those expectations are under each of those themes. So hopefully we advertise what we do because we're passionate about what we do and we believe in what we do. So Gillian, that's kind of bringing me to a point, I think, where I'm going to be asking if there's any questions. So let me just bring up my questions slide. And if there's any questions, I'm absolutely open to them.
Lovely, thank you very much, Joey. So we've had a couple of questions come through whilst you've been talking. So if I go to Christine, she says, if I do the Assessor Award, can I assess any qualification?
It's a good question. Well done. I've got some really good questions tonight, haven't we? Yes, the assessor qualification is transportable across any qualification area that you have competency in. So if you've been a team leader in the past, for example, you can go out and assess team leading. If you've been involved in customer service, you could go and assess customer service. If you've been an accountant, you could go and assess accountancy. If you've worked in logistics, you could go and assess logistics. So the assessor qualification is relevant across a whole raft of sectors, but you must carry those competencies to be able to effectively assess them. So hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent, thank you. And then I've had a question from Sana who says, is there a minimum number of standardisation sessions a centre should have per year?
Yeah, very good, very good. I would recommend that you run standardisation based on risk. So what I mean by that is if you've got a new team and you've got a new programme and maybe you're a new centre, I'd be holding standardisation regularly, maybe every month. If you're an established centre and you've got a very experienced team, you might find that standardisation twice a year is enough, or even once a year is enough. It really depends on where your programme is and how effective you feel it is. An awarding organisation won't stipulate how much standardisation takes place. They will only stipulate that standardisation must take place. So how much is really up to you as the training centre to decide how much do your teams need.
Perfect, thank you. And then a question from Mariam, which I think links in actually with what you've just said, is how much CPD should you do in a year?
Brilliant. Now it's good. Right. A few years ago, where before the Education and Training Foundation was established, it used to be known as the Institute for Learning. And they used to stipulate 30 hours a year was a good measure of professional development. The Education and Training Foundation don't stipulate a time, and neither do awarding organisations. And I know that sounds a little bit loose, but what I would say to you is I personally try to make an entry on my professional development record at least once a month, but I don't use time as a measure. I use the effectiveness of the development opportunity I undertook. So I don't look to count hours, I look to count opportunities, but there isn't a stipulated amount of opportunities that you must do. Again, it comes down to your training centre. How much development do you want your staff to have? How much do you want them to record? My rule of thumb, I do once a month.
Perfect, thank you. And then I think just based on time, I've got one more question from Omar, who says, if I identify any areas for improvement on the Education Training Foundation professional standards, do they have any resources that can help me improve those 20 standards?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So it might be that you might need extra support in contextualizing English and maths into your training. So maybe you want to give your learners a better experience with regards to English and maths, but put it into context of what you're training. So let's say you work in construction and you want your learners to understand volume and square meterage and things like that that are relevant to construction. The Education and Training Foundation actually hold webinars on delivering English and maths effectively. They have lots of resources and they can signpost you to a lot of resource to address the gaps in those standards. Yes, absolutely. It's a very much a one-stop shop for development. It's a really good platform.
Perfect, that's great. Well, Joey, I'd love to thank you for your contributions this afternoon. I think we've all learned a lot of really useful information and got a lot of good resources out of your presentation. So thank you very much for that. As I said before, everything will be uploaded onto the LCTD website, so lctd.co.uk, and onto the YouTube platform and LinkedIn. So you'll be able to access the recording and any associated resources afterwards. So thank you all very much for attending, and I've got lots of really positive messages coming through in the chat now, Joey, thanking you for a great presentation, interesting slides. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you everybody for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.